One of my predecessors told me, this is before I became the president of the bank, he said, our bank will never have a female president. He told me that. And when this all happened, I seriously wanted to go and say, remember that you told me that our bank would never have a female president? And to that, I'd like to say, in a very articulate manner, ha, that's my response.
That's it.
Need a partner who sees the big picture? Forza Management. We're not just property managers, we're strategic partners. Navigating the complex world of commercial real estate can be daunting. That's where Forza Management comes in. Forza Management provides services in the mountain and desert states and covers all types of asset classes, including retail, industrial, and office. Our team of experts delivers exceptional property management services, namely property maintenance, lease administration, and annual CAM reconciliations. When looking at your next property, check out our website at forzacommercial.com. Forza Management, maximizing your investment and minimizing your stress.
Welcome back to the Dirt Dog Pod. Today we've got an unbelievable guest, Shelly Holt, president of First Community Bank, Utah.
Thank you so much.
Thanks for joining us.
My first podcast.
You know, the least we could do is have you on a podcast with a prestigious name like Dirt Dog Pod.
Yes. I feel I've started it well. Yes.
So you were just telling me how you were psychoanalyzing me while you were sitting in my office. So, you know, do you care to share any more there? With
about your office or mine?
Well, just what you found out about me. As
well, there was a
45-47
hat. I saw that. So I said, that's okay. Lots of sports. There's a crocodile or an alligator in the corner, which I said, that looks really real.
It is very real. It's an alligator.
So I scooted away from that. Yeah. There's a mini treadmill.
Yep.
That you could, I said, well, there you go.
You probably noticed it wasn't as used as it could be.
Well, I was wondering what was over in the, it wasn't right by the desk. It was over a little bit.
Yeah.
But yeah, there was lots of good pictures of people and stuff. So it just reminds me how active you are. You're really going a lot.
Well, there you go.
Because remember that one time I sent you a text and you responded so quickly and you said, that's how I roll. And I was like, okay, now I know.
It's mostly just if I don't do it right now, then I'll forget about it.
Yeah, we need you to just sign something. It was back like in 10 seconds. I said, okay, well.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
That is how I like to live my life for sure. Well, we've had a wonderful time getting to know each other over the last year almost, right? That you asked me to be on the board for the bank, which has been a tremendous experience for me.
Has it been interesting for you?
You know, I don't think I understood. I think I understand retail, decent handle on what retail is and commercial real estate as it relates to retail. I had really not that great of an understanding on some of the other asset classes. And I think that's what's been so fun for me.
And all the governance that you have as a financial institution that really is difficult to sometimes work through, how much governance we have. And
I think it's easy for a lot of people to complain about banking and what their relationship might be with their bank. Maybe they're frustrated that they have fees on their account. Maybe they're frustrated with, something that costs them money to wire money in and out. I don't think most people spend very much time thinking about how a bank makes money. And
that those services you do actually cost. I mean, they're an expense to us. Like for us to do a wire, we have a charge that we have. So,
and not only do we have a charge, but then you're also thinking about the competent person that we have that is helping the customer in that role. And there's another component of things that I think if you have a banking relationship and you're inclined to kind of complain about it, what you may not be thinking about is the person that's actually helping me a professional? Are they a 9 out of 10 or a 10 out of 10 in the industry? And maybe I'm taking all of that for granted, and maybe I should just, get over the fact there's a charge.
And this morning, we have a customer, a nonprofit that banks with us, and one of our employees noticed that they had a check, unusual amount, too large for them, noticed a check and called them and said, this is unusual. What's going on? They discovered they had fraud. They didn't know until our employee called them to say, why do you have such a large check going through? You normally don't. And they said, this isn't us. And since then, that was this morning, we've discovered several checks that they've had out in the community. And
oh my goodness.
Yeah. So it's just that little, it's that one person that notices something that makes a difference.
Well, it's been a fun year for me. I've learned a lot. Like I said, I learned a lot. I've thought a lot about how a bank makes profit and money. I've thought a lot about the team members. I'm very impressed with the team members that you put together. You really have a killer team.
And with that, Chris, if I could just say, to me, that part, the part of making money and meeting goals and such, to me, that's a means to the end. To me, the end is over here. And what that to me is community. Investing in our communities. What can we do to help our communities and our employees? Those are my two priorities, communities and our employees. And so once I get the loan portfolio going and it's making money and everything's just churning on its own, then I get to do this fun stuff, which is our communities, our employees. And that's what we're really close to that point, and I'm excited about that.
That's wonderful. How long have you been in the role here as president?
This is my fifth year. I've been there for 20 years, which I know you're saying, wow, really? You look so youthful, but yes, I've been there for 20 years. Yeah. And I've been in banking my whole life. So
have you? Mm-hmm. Why banking?
Well, I'll tell you, my dad and my two uncles all were in banking. And so some people think it's because of that. And I'll be honest. It's because they have great hours and they get paid holidays. Mm-hmm. And they're usually closed on Saturday. I was a student at the U.
Mm-hmm. And I thought you were going to tell me you like dumb suckers.
Yeah, or something. and I love the suckers. But I was a student at the U, and I found a teller job 1 to 6. Mm-hmm. Still one of the best jobs I've ever had. And I'd go to school in the morning, and I'd go and be a teller from 1 to 6. And all my friends were in retail or fast food, and they were working 9, 10, 11 o'clock at night. And I could go and do my homework at night, and it was one of my best jobs was that first teller job.
And so you weren't with First Community at the time? Where'd you start?
I started at Zions Bank.
Wonderful.
My dad was at Zions Bank in the investment department, and he really wanted me and my sister. We both became tellers at the same time, 2 different branches, and we did that while we were in school. Worked in the afternoon, went to school in the morning, and then I became a branch manager when I was 22 of our branch, and that was hard because then what happened is I worked full-time, more than full-time,
That's pretty young for a branch manager. No?
And so then I had to go to school at night.
Okay.
And so that was hard. And back in those days, you couldn't do online or virtual anything. So you had to physically go. So I'd go to school at night after I get done with work, and I'd go summer and sometimes at 10 o'clock at night, and I'd be, looking outside and people are out having fun. I'm still in my 10 o'clock class and such. But I thought to myself, I need to graduate. And so it's going to be hard the last couple of years when I was a manager, but I plugged through and graduated in finance from the University of Utah.
I mean, really outside of a few blips over a very long time period in the country, banking really is a very stable situation.
It really is.
Yeah.
It really is. I mean, you can go back and say, well, do they have too much power? Do they not have enough? Central government, all of that. But yeah, they really play an integral role. And that's why when I was talking about how much regulation we have, a lot of that's because for the most part, we do a lot for the government. And sometimes we feel like we're the police for them. Get us this information, get us this information. And we're like, we still have a business to run.
Yeah.
And so, and that changes each administration, as you can imagine.
So what does the bank look like today versus when you took over as president 5 years ago?
What I really tried hard to focus on, I think every person, at least I do, I have to have a purpose. And I was really trying hard to find my purpose. It was announced that I was going to become the president in September. I wasn't supposed to take over till January. Mm-hmm. And so I was at the beach in Laguna Beach, California, where I go every year. And I'm like, I need a purpose. What's my purpose? And I read a book by Melinda Gates called The Moment of Lift. And it just came to me. We're going to make this the era of lift. And that's what we've called the last 5 years while I've been the president, the era of lift. What do we lift? We lift our employees. We lift our communities. We lift our training. We lift our learning, everything, our values. And it became the era of lift. And that's what we've called it. And that's been what I've focused on for the last 5 years.
Wow, have fun. And when you think about terms of things of lifting your team members, right? Let's go to the team members for a minute. What are some of the things you've done to implement that and build them up?
What's fun for me is, and I believe this fully, that when you're the leader, you don't have to have the good ideas. You just have to know what they are when you hear them. And so the best ideas we have come from everybody else. And I just have to say, that's a good idea. Let's do that. So some of the things we've been able to do, which have not come from me, we have a mentoring program, a formal mentoring program that we started 3 years ago, which has been really successful and really fun for us to do that, to mentoring some of the younger people that are coming up through the ranks. We have a leadership academy, which is, again, was not my idea. It's two of our employees who went to school, graduate banking school, and they came back and they said, we'd like to do a leadership academy. We've done that for the last 4 years.
So is that just like a extra extracurricular learning situation?
So we have every year that we have people apply, our employees apply. This is our third year that we're in it right now, and we have monthly classes, and then they do papers, they do homework, and such. And we do a leadership academy, we do a leadership boot camp, which is for other employees, and we're starting just next week leadership seminar, and that's because we're going to have, and we've already seen it, a lot of people start retiring. You know, you have this age, 60 something, they're all starting to retire. And we need to get this next group ready to go. And right now they're on the bench. They're not in the game yet. And I'm just trying to get them there. So right now there's this big gap of learning between the people that have been in those positions for 25, 30 years, because we have a lot of longevity at our bank, and those that are 5 years in. And it's what can we do to bridge that gap so that they have, my goal is I would love every employee to retire from our bank. Some will, some won't. But while they're there, I want them to be the very best version of themselves, whatever that looks like. And I don't know. And that's the fun part. What's the best version of them? How can they learn and grow? And how can I help them? And if they look back 20 years from now and they say, you know, that one job I had at First Community Bank, that was one of the best jobs I've ever had. Even if they're not with us, that's what I want. That's the legacy, Chris, for me, is to make them the best version of themselves.
You know, we did a ton of loans with Kirk. Who retired from the bank a couple of years ago. Boy, think about the knowledge that existed in his head as he walked out the door that last time.
Yeah. And because we have such long-term employees, I mean, we had that. And so we're like, okay, what do we have to do? You know, there's different learning, there's different schools, but there's a lot on the job. There's a lot of learning from of course, the customers and such. And so we're very fortunate that our average, you know, it's 20 plus years. That's our average tenure of employee. We have two that are there 45 years.
45 years.
It's the only place they've ever worked. I mean, straight from high school. Yeah. I don't think their car can drive anywhere else. when they retire, they're still going to come and hang out with us in the parking lot.
That's funny.
So great employees that we have.
No, that's good. So the era of lift, you've lifted, and you've certainly lifted the profile of the bank. You know, from my perspective, seems to me when I first understood the bank, I met through one of the other board members and a good friend of both of ours, and it just seemed kind of like you were just kind of a up north bank, didn't really have much coverage. And that has very much not been the case.
Not now.
Even when I joined the board a year ago, I kind of thought that it was just kind of a northern Utah situation, and we really didn't have much of an impact anywhere else. And that is not very much not the case. I mean, we're spread throughout the whole state.
And so our origin is First National Bank of Layton, which was originated in 1905. It's the first bank in Utah, first bank in Layton. And 1905, long time, but up until 5 years ago, we were 300 million, which is still a really small community bank.
And that's in terms of total deposits.
That's in terms of total assets, total deposits. And so what happened, and I'll tell you just a little bit of the background because now we're First Community Bank. And I tell you, if we wouldn't have changed the name, I don't think a lot of people would have noticed because we still had the same faces. I mean, so many people were worried we wouldn't have the same faces. But that's the reason that we did the merger, is so we would have the same faces. So what happened about 7 years ago, people wanted to buy us right and left, all these in-state banks. And why? Just what you just said, they wanted Davis County, and that's where our headquarters is. And they really wanted us. But we realized that if they bought us, then they would just buy the branches and the teller line and the loan officers and all the backroom functions. 60% of our employees would be gone because they wouldn't need it. And so what we did about 7 years ago is we started searching for someone, because it's up to the shareholders, of course. The board did not own 51% of the shares. So it had to be the shareholders that decided if we were going to sell the bank or not. And so we decided to go look for someone. So we went to Glacier Bancorp because they had 4 branches, just kind of random in Utah, that they had bought from other acquisitions. And we knew that they wanted to expand in Utah. And their model was to buy good banks with good people and good economies and leave them alone. And so we're like, if we do that and we can keep our employee base and we can grow at the same time, that's a win. And it was a very stressful time and exciting time because we had, like I said, we had 3 banks inside of Utah that really, really wanted us. And Glacier came in and made the best pitch to the shareholders, and it passed. I think it was 80-something%. So it was really good. And so we had to change our name because we had to take the national out because we were no longer going to be a national bank. And that's when we said, let's put community in, because that's really what we stood for, was community. So since that time, because we took those 4 branches in Utah, we automatically doubled in size overnight. We went from 300 to 600. And now our next goal is $1 billion. And we're going to get there in the next 2 years. That's my goal. Next 2 years, we're going to get past $1 billion. And then it will be great selling from there. But becoming part of Glacier, there's some advantages that we've had for our customers because of the footprint in the West. Our customers can go to any of the Glacier divisions, and it's just like they're with us in Layton. The same accounts, the same. You can look up all your information. You can use the ATM. So there's 200 branches that you can go to.
200 total. And
220, something like that they can go to anywhere.
And how many banks is that operating through?
There's 17 divisions, 17, Oregon and Arizona and Colorado and Montana and Wyoming. And so it's really been great. And we're all in the West. We're not in California in the West, but the rest of the states in the West, Nevada, there's one in Reno. And they're really, all of us have really good economies. So that's going well for us. Mm-hmm. But what we're able to do, there's a couple of things. One, we're able to lend at a higher limit. Before, our limit was $7 million total. We couldn't go above that. Now we can go up to $50 million. So, and you could actually go beyond that if you wanted. So we're able to do more for our customers. And that's when we really started growing, because we could do bigger loans for our customers and not have them have to go somewhere else to get that help. And then we were also able to do a lot for our employees that we weren't able to do before, because Glacier is publicly traded, so that we can have them own stock and such. And First National Bank, we were private. And so we had stock, but it was privately held. So that's been kind of fun to see that with the employees be able to own their own stock in the company. So it's been good.
Those limit increases are huge, especially when you think of terms of commercial development. That is one of the biggest downers, I think, that exists out there in the world as we've gone through, especially this recent run up in costs. Everything is just a fortune to build anything anymore.
Yeah.
Right. Even these tiny little drive-throughs that I work on are $2.5 to $4 million a piece every time.
And the last few years, we keep waiting for a normal year.
Yeah.
3 years ago, the interest rates went crazy. 2 years ago, we were going to have 6 interest rate cuts. We had 2 in November. And this year, we're like, everything's going to be fine. Everything's going to be mellow. And then no. And then life happened, and we don't know about these tariffs. And I was at a Utah bankers meeting a little while ago, and everyone said it's basically a real wait and see. So we have some borrowers that are kind of sitting on the sidelines, and some that want to immediately go because they're not sure what's going to happen. So we're doing really well this year. So it's been a good year for us, but knock on wood.
So the buyout or the merger with Glacier
2019
was in 2019. So that was prior to the time that you became president. Mm-hmm. And so you stepped in, and at that point, could you kind of tell what was up and down post merger? It seems like it always takes a little while, right?
Yeah. Yeah. You know that saying about, they always say, the things you should never trust is the checks in the mail, and everything will be the same after the merger. That's one of my favorite things I've heard. But really, we had a lot the same. We only had 5 employees left us. And that's because we didn't need their positions, but they all had jobs before they even left us, because we had a severance and such for them. And so that was very gratifying that we were able to keep so many of our employees. And really, that technology, we had really good technology before, and the last few years, Glacier's been working on the technology, so we're really coming up to speed on that. But really, besides that, like I said, same faces. And so they come in, they still see, Kirk was just in, like you mentioned, Kirk, just the other day, and so they still come in and see us. And we had a few weeks ago, we had a bunch of our employees, and someone said, "God, you guys, you're all the same." And we're like, "Well, we're getting older, so we do have some new employees, but we also are still here." So.
Well, that's good. It sounds like here you are, 6 years post merger, and to be able to retain as many team members as you have, sounds like it was, mission accomplished for what you're after.
As I mentioned, the era of Lyft, and my goal, I am the first female president. And I always say that my goal was never to be the first female president. My goal is not to be the last. And so what can I do? Yeah. And I just really want to put so much emphasis into learning and training and growing that they're going to be fine. Whoever comes after me, they're going to have exactly what they need. But I've always wanted to really look towards, I say I look towards the future from the past. And I like to do that. I like to look, what are we going to do next? But what's our foundation? Mm-hmm. And that's what I try to remember. And that's what I try to do.
So as you're zeroing in on the 1 billion mark in total asset value, how does a bank grow asset value? Is it by obtaining new customers and attracting new customers to the bank?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. We could, if there was another opportunity for Glacier to buy someone in Utah, we could grow that way, which would grow us a lot faster. But really, it's one loan at a time, one deposit at a time. And it's so exciting when you get that new customer And my favorite thing to do is to go out, like meeting you and seeing these businesses, and people are so smart and creative. And I'm like, what? How do they come up with that? I love that. It's my favorite thing, to go out to business and see what they do and how they build. And then we get to do the fun part, which is help them build their dreams. And that's what we get to do. That we get the easy part. They're the hard part. They're the ones that are so creative. But that's what I love to do. And that's what. So really, it's one customer at a time. It really is.
Porter, Shelly has admitted we're smart and that we know what we're doing building drive-through. We should probably just call the interview right now.
Yeah. That's a high note right there.
That's right. This is George Costanza from Seinfeld. We're going to end it, and we're out.
And we're out of here. Yeah.
So, it's interesting. It's interesting to think behind why somebody would shift their account from one bank to another. It does seem like the general sentiment of what we see happening in America on a broad perspective terms is that a lot of people are generally leaving the very large banks and are going to more of the community banks. Is that what you see as well?
And it's because of the attention. The products are the same. A checking account, savings account, there's going to be little tiny incremental differences. It's the people. Like I mentioned to you this morning, finding that weird thing on an account. I mean, it may have taken that business 4 or 5 more days before they found fraud. We found it the very next morning because something went through and they said, that seems odd to me. That's what you get when you go to a smaller bank. You get someone that says, let me help you. Big banks are great for their locations and their ATMs and all of that until there's a problem. When there's a problem, that's when we really solidify the relationship. So many examples, Chris, of people that we've helped and they've tried to go to other banks and they haven't been able to get any assistance or even people that they know, but they come to us and we're like, we'll help you figure this out. Even if they don't bank with us, let us walk you through the fraud process. Let us help you. And then why people leave their bank is usually because something happened that made them unhappy. That's why. Sometimes they leave because of our community involvement and things that we're doing on that front. But a lot it's because we were able to help them in a situation.
We were just going through my deal board as you guys were sitting there in my office and showing you the 90-second transaction we just closed. And so by owning 92 pieces of property and a brokerage and property management company that we manage for all kinds of third-party clients, we have banking relationships with literally dozens of banks at the moment out of this office. And I would tell you the one absolute sticky part to me about First Community Bank, and the reason I would never go anywhere ever on earth, simply put, is my banker is the best banker I have ever worked with in my entire professional career, Mike Patovich.
And when you call him, he answers, right?
It's so funny. Every time I need something from him, which I don't really, I guess every customer likes to think they're not the needy customer. And you really don't know until you've been told if you're the needy customer. Okay, but in my mind, I'm not a needy customer. Maybe Mike can set the record straight, but so in my mind, I'm not that needy of a customer. I need something from about like once a month or every other month. And I called him literally just yesterday, and he's
in Bear Lake.
He started laughing, and I'm like, "What? Are you in Bear Lake again?" And he's like, "I told my girls on the way up here, Chris is going to call me every single time he's in Bear Lake on off time. I call him and I need something. I don't know what it is. I don't know if it's like a sixth sense or like what the thing is."
He's relaxing. But I bet so when he answers, he says, "My man."
Yeah, exactly.
And then he just says, "What do you need?"
Exactly. I said, "I don't need to bug you. Can I call someone else?" "No, just tell me what you need and I'll handle it." And honestly, because of that, I would never bank any, he's my preferred banker because of that.
And I remember our chief lending officer, Jason, a few years ago, he was on the phone with a customer dealing with a wire situation at 1 a.m.
Yeah.
And he, Jason and I were going back and forth, and he was 1 a.m. because it was overseas, and he was talking to people, and that's just what you do. You pick up the phone. I mean, we don't have phone trees. We have people that answer the phone and say, "How can we help you?" And that's the difference.
That personal touch is really an extra component. And I got to imagine it's just something that once a bank gets too big, it's very difficult to obtain. Is that part of the reason that Glacier has wanted to kind of keep everybody in place? Because they want to continue, they want a bigger presence, but they also want to give the customer what they...
Yeah, they really do. They want to have, like I said, good markets, good people, good economies, and then really just kind of let them run their show. I mean, I had people always ask me, how often does Glacier, interfere or call you? And I'm like, sometimes I can go quite a while without hearing from anyone. And it's just because they let you run. And they let you run, and we can do our thing, and we make our own local decisions. We set our own rates. We do our own loans. And so we really do run quite independently. But it's also good because you have this balance sheet. Like I said, we were able to lend higher amounts to people because you use their balance sheet. instead of ours. And so theirs is, 20 billion. And so that's why we're able to do much higher loans. And then, as I mentioned, just some of the things we're able to do for the employees that we wouldn't be able to do as a $300 million community bank. But now we can still be community, but able to do some really nice things for people.
Yeah. How fun. Talk to us a little bit about the business of running a bank, right? So obviously you're taking in deposits, right? And there's plenty of static deposits that sit there, whether it's a checking account or higher interest savings or whatever it is. And then more or less is you're just turning around and loaning those out. And if you look at the portfolio of what's loaned out at the moment, right, with our bank, where are we loaned out to? Is that primarily single family residences?
There's a lot. High concentration in single family because we're Utah. And so Utah has a lot of people that want to live here, a lot of families and such. So yeah, we have a lot in single family, we have a lot in hospitality. We always want to do more in the other diverse classes. But Utah, for the last several years, it's been apartments, which, because housing is really hard to afford. And I still think, Chris, that that's the American dream, is to own a home. I mean, I still think that that's it. So the more we can do to help that, first-time home buyers, and I love that. We have our mortgage people, when they're on the phone and I can hear them talking to people that are going to get their first house, I just want to drive by and, invite myself for dinner. Hi, you don't know me, but I work with your mortgage loan officer. I'd love to have dinner with you. That's my favorite thing. It's just because I still think that's the American dream, is to own a home. But yeah, it's a lot in multifamily, a lot in hospitality is where a lot of our loans are right now.
Why do you think that's the American dream still?
I still think...
Because it is interesting,
yeah,
right?
I still think it's coming, the immigrants coming over on the boat. The streets aren't gold, but they thought that they were gold. So what do they want to do? They want to own and have a roof over their heads and have a place for their family to enjoy a meal. And, maybe it's multifamily, generational because of the times. But to me, that's still the dream. I own a piece of property in this land. And to me, that's very, very important. And it still is. And I look at my nieces and nephews and they want to own homes and, have they missed their window? No, I don't think so. It'll come again. That's what I keep telling them. Save. Be ready, have a good credit score, and when the time is right, which it will happen, then you own a home. And to me, everyone wants that little plot of ground. It doesn't matter how small it is, it's theirs. And so I still think that's my version of the American dream still, which I know is, back with Ellis Island, but it's still there.
You almost, giving your advice there, you very much sound like a banker. You went into banker mode.
Okay.
Save and it'll come around.
Yeah. I did a meeting with some youth, young adults a little while ago, and a bunch of them asked me that question. They said, how do we get a home? And I said, okay, let's talk about it. How can you get a home? And so we really talked about what you have to do, how you have to prepare. To me, good luck is just opportunity meets preparation meets, they all three sync up.
Yeah.
And so I said, you have to prepare now. Don't start saving for it when it's time to get a home. Save for it now. Work on your credit now. And then when it comes, you'll be ready. And
so you took over the bank and you got handed the reins January of 2020.
Yeah, I actually took over the reins a little bit earlier in December.
In December.
Just because our president decided to leave. And I said, well, there we go. So much for the honeymoon period. But
right. So then you got a whopping 90 days from December of calm. And then a small little event hit the world in March of 2020. What was that like?
And COVID was so interesting for all of us because we were considered essential, when the essential workers, and we had to have little badges made that said we were essential, and I'd drive to work and no one would be out. But we didn't have our lobbies open unless it was by appointment, but we had our drive-throughs open and stuff. And then we did PPP loans, which was really fun too, to help. We got a lot of new customers through the PPP loans and able to help businesses, hopefully save businesses and such. That was really exciting, but it was really fun too, because how much do you do when your lobby's closed? I mean, we cleaned a lot of closets.
Oh, yeah.
We did a lot of storage things then. Yeah.
Great moment to get all that stuff knocked out, right?
Windows, cleaning windows.
Digging through 25-year-old Halloween decorations.
I mean, that building has been there since the 1800s. We had a lot. We had a lot of stuff to go through.
Yeah. Okay. So COVID hits. You try to figure out how in the world do we even function? Is society going to exist next month? Right? I mean, those thoughts were going through all our brains, right? And then we come out of that, and then it's still just a rocky ride in 21.
Yeah, but we had a lot of deposits because of the PPP, and a lot of people wanted to start doing things again. So a lot of loan activity, and so that was really fun. I mean, business was booming. Everyone wanted to get everything they'd put on hold. So that was a really fun time to be in banking, just because things were going well and people wanted to get out of their homes now and see people and do things. So yeah, that was a good time actually.
Okay, so from my perspective, as we went into 2022, I would describe that as the most no fun year of.
Let's see. Yeah, was
It's
that
way
the
up
interest
there.
rate year?
Yeah,
Yeah.
08 and 09 was not very fun either. Don't get me wrong.
I remember those.
Boy, that October of 08 free fall in the stock market
Yeah.
until what, February? That was alarming, because back to the point of, is society going to exist anymore? I mean, it kind of made you wonder. But 2022 really wasn't that fun. We were under construction on a whole slew of buildings, and we're at a fixed rate margin, on an unlevered yield on cost ratio, and our lending rate was here, which was very comfortable. And then all of a sudden, in like a few months, our lending rate was here, and you're looking at it going, I don't know if this is worth this anymore.
Right, right. That's exactly what happened.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
what was that like for you?
And then on our side, so you could say, well, the banks must have loved it because their loan rates went up. What else happened? The deposit rates went up. And so you do this budget when you're like, oh, the deposit rates are going to be here. No, they're not. The deposit rates went up so fast and so high, so fast, and no one was prepared for it. And so our budget, we like to joke that our budget was out of date before we even hit January 1st because the interest expense was so high. And that's what you were talking about, how banks make money. Well, it's the difference between loans and deposits. And all of a sudden, the loan rates went up, but the deposit rates went up even more. And so that margin between the two, yeah, that was really, really hard.
And what a rocky road, because the whole time you're trying to run these teams, and each branch has its own sub team, right? And then, of course, you got the corporate team at the main HQ. And what a nightmare to run that budget off of that.
And really, to us, you can buy deposits by having high interest rates. We really wanted to have relationships. So it's like, okay, do we do this type of rate? Well, we do it if we can get the relationship. It's all about relationships, not transactions. And so that's still our philosophy. You have some people that come and say, oh, I want this rate. And we always look at the relationship. Do we have their checking account? Do we have their kids' accounts? And if so, then we want to do that. We want to work with them because of that. But if it's just a transaction, people hop all the time. But yeah, 2 years ago, interest rates too high. Then, we're waiting for the cuts. No, nothing happened. And then, like I said, this year, I'm like, this is it. This is my year. And yeah, so far, so good, though.
I was going to, here's the thing. I was lamenting to you, right, that the development equation hasn't become any easier to solve. The retailers that we're working with, their equation isn't any easier to solve, right? Their labor cost continues to remain up. Who knows what's going to get hit with the tariff or any other kind of importing cost, not to mention just there's general supply chain disruptions that are still existing that have never recovered from COVID. So it really is just kind of it's been a wild couple 5 years.
It really has. That's why I've aged exponentially. I've decided.
That's funny.
The last 5 years I've only felt like 10, but
Yeah. What's interesting about all that is that during that time period, if you have figured out how to lift, right, the era of lift, right, it's really amazing, right? If you figured out how to rise, and if you figured out how to encourage, your people to be better, and how to get the revenues up, and how to get the net up, it's wonderful. It's really kudos. Because if you've been able to operate through this, it's really not been that smooth of sailing.
It really hasn't been. It really has been a rough time. That's why I said there was no honeymoon. Like I'm like, there's no honeymoon. I had no honeymoon period whatsoever. I just kind of jumped right in with credit quality and things like that right off the bat. And so it has been very gratifying to see that. And you just said the word rise. And we just had a quarterly celebration in January. And that's what I said to them. I said, this is our 5th year of the era of lift. Now's the time. If you have not, rise. Now is your time to rise. This is our year that we're going to rise. And it's been really kind of fun to see employees seize that and do that in different ways of just how they're learning and growing and bettering themselves. Yeah.
So when you get together with the group of 16 other bank heads that are at the Glacier Bank level, is there a healthy amount of trash talk that occurs at these events?
There probably is. I probably go to bed a lot earlier than everybody else. Like I can hear people coming in pretty late, and I'm like, I know who it is, because I'm an early to bed kind of person. But yeah, Yeah. Because they do a best of the best.
Sure.
And I swear, when we're at the lower end, I swear the slide just stays up there forever. And this last time we were middle to top, and I'm like, oh, well, that was fast. Why don't we linger a little bit longer now that we're? So I think it's all perception. But yeah, there are just some great people, great people out there that I love working with.
But you're a competitive person. You want to we want to be at the top.
Yeah. It was funny because in this meeting we had in January, we're doing kind of a different strategy on new accounts than some of the other divisions. And they were like, well, we'll see how it goes. We'll look at this at the end of the year. And I sent a text message to our marketing head, and I said, we better do well at this. I'm like, I'm not coming back here in December and saying we didn't do well, so we better do well at this. So yes, there is competition.
Listen, from a marketing perspective, if I can try and step in for a minute, I love where we're headed. It's been fantastic. I know we were just chatting about that offline, right? It's been a lot of fun. It's been entertaining, some of the ads that we're pushing out there and some of the content.
Yeah, and I don't want to burst your bubble here, Chris, but I'm not very hip, and so it's been really kind of fun for me I'm like, oh, like that's a reel. Okay. I thought a reel meant it's real.
Right.
But that's good.
You know what, though? That's the thing. If you've got the understanding to figure out that that's not your strength, and you've been able to make strategic, additions with team members to figure out that is their strength, then that's it. You're hitting it.
I always say, if I'm the smartest person in the room, I need to find a new room. I don't want to be the smartest person.
Yeah.
I want to be the one that's constantly learning. And I love it. Usually when I go throughout the day, I'll look at the clock and say, okay, it's 10:30. I just learned something new. I love that. That's why we're here. I just want to continue to grow and learn and see what happens.
What do you see on the horizon as we look into the rest of 2025 here?
I think that things will calm down. I think that the Fed, they will cut rates. I think that they'll feel pressure to cut rates probably in June. I don't think it'll be, people were saying 4 times earlier this year or late last year. I don't think it's going to be 4 times. I think it's going to be twice. I think they'll cut rates twice. We're going to continue to grow. Utah will continue to grow. That's why we have such a great economy. So we'll continue to do that. But I think that things will calm down. I think that when you're first in office, you have a blustery of stuff you're trying to get done, and then things kind of calm down a little bit. So I think that we'll get there.
Yeah. I do think with the foregoing of the May cut, it does feel like kind of the longer that gets pushed out, that whenever it comes back, it should have even more kind of fervor, right?
Yeah.
And hopefully that translates directly into investor sentiment and sentiment in the market.
Yeah, and you can, you read one article that says no rate cuts. You read another article that says, yes, there'll be rate cuts. I think that there will be. Yeah.
What are you seeing, because you've got such great exposure to kind of general Utah business operators of various businesses, all really kind of all different sectors? What are you hearing and seeing from the business owners as you're out there talking to them?
Most of them are really still very optimistic and still wanting to do things. It wasn't like COVID when everyone just kind of, put a lock on their door. It's not like that. I think that a lot of people are still going. Maybe we have to sharpen our pencil a little bit on some things, but I think that people are still building. They're still doing things. I think that people want to do things. I think they want to progress. And so we're doing great. We have a really strong pipeline. We have a lot of people that are interested in doing new loans and such. So we're really, really optimistic. I mean, we're almost halfway through the year, one more month, and we're halfway through. But I think it's going to be a good remainder of the year. I really do. And I'm a positive person anyway. So I'm glass, half full or fill me up anyway. So, but I think it's going to be a good rest of the year.
Yeah. We have a lot of younger people to the business that listen in on these episodes. And I think one of the things that I constantly, get questioned about all the time from especially the young people trying to do development work, or, maybe it's a person that knows retail leasing or industrial leasing and they want to buy an existing property and partner with somebody and put some investors into it. But they're always so intimidated about, can I get a loan? Can I get a loan? What's the best advice you could give to somebody that's an up and comer about what they might want to do to prepare their balance sheet, themselves? What can they do?
You know what we would love to do? We love talking to people. So I would say the number one thing they need to do is wherever they bank, communicate with your banker. Tell them, this is what I want to do. 1 year, 2 year, 5 year, and let them be your partner. I mean, that's the best thing. Sometimes we meet with people and we're like, you know what, you're a year ahead of getting this line of credit, but here's what you can do in the meantime to get there. And that's the best conversation you can have with people. And our loan officers love to do that all day long. And then you see them improving and getting this. But let the bank, whatever financial institution you're with, let them be your partner. Do it together. Don't try to figure this all out. This is our stuff. This is your stuff. You're good at your stuff. We're good at our stuff. Let us help you. That's what I would say. Just go and meet with them and say, hey, do you have a minute? Can we talk about what I'd like to do? And like I said, I've been to so many businesses that have just had these creative ideas, and we're like, let us help you get there. So really communication, which is, I think, an answer to almost everything, but communication. Communicate with your banker, talk to them, be a partner with them. You're not on opposite sides. You're both working towards the same goal.
I love thinking about it as a partnership.
It's a partnership. It is. It's not a transaction. It's got to be a partnership.
Yeah. And that, back to the strength of where a regional and developing that relationship with a person and, that and can meet regularly with that's in your community, right? And finding them and then creating a plan.
Yeah. Yeah, our loan officers, I love when I see our chief lending officer, his mileage report, so-and-so, so-and-so, and so-and-so. I'm like, yes, that's great. I love doing that. And the other part that we haven't talked about really yet is the nonprofits. I love helping the nonprofits. I feel bad that we have the need for so many because Utah's a great state and we have a great economy. And you're like, why do we have such need? But that's what I love to do. We're not big enough. We can't go do, name a stadium after us or a sports team or things like that. But what we can do is we can do 200 dinners for Thanksgiving. We can do things like that. And that matters to me. That's the cream on the top of the Diet Coke. There's no cream on Diet Coke, but I'm just saying that because that's what I drink. But that's to me.
It depends if you go to Swig.
Yeah, it depends what's in it.
Sure.
But to me, if I can help, this child, or we do the Young Living and go out shopping for these kids. And we always spend way too much money, of our own money because we just want them to succeed and be their best selves. Oh, I love that. That's what I mean when I want this part just to run itself and do well. And then we get to do the community. We get to help the community. We get to grow. And that and our employees, those are going to be my golden years.
Yeah. Which
are coming up soon.
Well, I like that. So you've got the era of lift, followed by the golden years.
Yeah. I'm getting up there, Chris. This light is good, but I'm just saying.
Okay. Oh, that's funny. Back to the young lending proposition. I think when I first started buying commercial real estate, I didn't quite understand what it was. And I think most people don't. And I think that's what stems the questions that come into me that I get occasionally. I used to think that I had to have, like X amount on my balance sheet and that I could only then borrow like half of X or 3/4 of X. And what's so fascinating about commercial real estate is really by about the time you've taken your second loan or third loan, you've vastly eclipsed anything that was in your balance sheet, right? Because it's so expensive to do commercial real estate. Yeah. And so, whether you have loan 3 or loan 300, it doesn't matter. What you owe is so much greater than what you have. So it truly is a relationship business.
It is. And I love that as a community bank, you have a toolbox. And so you can go and you can help construct a loan. It doesn't have to be inside this parameter. It's like, this is a little bit different. Hey, what if we do this? What if we do this? Let's try this. We did this loan last week. And the way that our lending people decided to do it, I was like, I would never have thought of that. It was switching collateral from one to another. And I was just like, brilliant. Let's do that. So there's really lots of different ways that you can work on things. But again, it's the partnership between the banker and the business.
Partnership and thoughtful communication.
And really thinking outside of the box. That's one of my favorite things about our lenders is just, they're like, let us get back to you on that. Let us think about that for a bit. And then they come back with these great ideas.
I do think it helps that we're in a wonderful community. We're in a great state. It's thriving. There's so many great things to talk about with the state of Utah.
Yeah, I do. I love it here, even though I know that we're getting more people here and more traffic and such, but still, it's a really great place to live. And yeah, I'm very proud of our state. Great
to get to know you. Like I said, over the last year, it's been a lot of fun. And I think what's really cool is you can feel your energy coming out in this podcast, right? As you're talking about your team and you're talking about this era of lift, and now as you're alluding to these golden years, right? These golden years, that you've got here coming in the future, you can feel your energy.
Oh,
you truly have a passion to run this team and do what you're doing.
Because And part of that is because you give some things up. There's only so many hours in a day. And I always say to myself, has it been worth it? Has it been worth it, the journey that I've been on? And it's worth it. When last Friday, I was at the Leadership Academy and seeing these people, their ideas and their questions. And we talked about trust. We talked about loyalty and all these great things. And they're coming to you, like you're the Dalai Lama or something. And I'm like, well, I don't have all the answers, but let me tell you what I think. And it's wonderful. I love it. And I left last Friday from that meeting and I was just flying. I had a great day. It was really fun. And, they're probably, I don't know, they're quite a bit, it feels quite a bit difference in our ages. But to me, I just think, oh man, the future is bright. I'm not worried about the future. I know some people worry about the next generation and, we're going to do this and we're just going to be doing our phones all day and not learning how to read. But I'm telling you, the future is bright.
Let's hit that next generation for a minute. Okay. In my household, I'm raising 2 boys and 3 girls. Mm-hmm. And it's clear that the 3 girls are running everybody's life and the entire family. Especially the oldest one as we go into the teenage years, and heaven help us, we're going to have a second teenager in January. But, it's been interesting running a household with these strong female personalities. Attempting to run a household. Did I say running a household?
You did.
Yeah, let's rewind that one back. We all know who's in charge of my house. It's my wife, for sure, and then my daughters. But it's been interesting, and I think Utah has had a very slow to react demographic.
Yeah.
I would imagine when you get together with other banking heads in the state of Utah, I would assume that there are not a vast majority of female banking heads. No. Is that a correct statement?
That's very true. In Utah, less than 10% of the CEOs in general, not just banking, are women. It's even less for banking. In the United States, it's 7.5%, which is really low. It's not even double digits.
Boy.
And only one is of one of the head of the 50 largest banks. And so I don't know if it's just because banking has always kind of maybe been a little bit more male traditional, finance, accounting, that may be why a lot of people, more women work at banks than men generally, but not in the higher levels, you would say. And I think that part of that probably has to do with just the unknown of, finance kind of just sounds like it's going to be difficult, but it's really not. I mean, to me, finance is like everything else. It just has to do with communication and relationships and figuring it out, so.
What is it like to be a head of bank as a female?
So, I used to go to meetings and I used to count the ratio, and it was always 10%. Mm-hmm. The women were always 10% less than the men. And I wish that I could say that that's really changed over the years, but it really hasn't. And I know that back in Washington, there's doing women in banking groups and things like that, allies and forum groups that they're doing to try to increase the number of women. To me, it's always just the best person. And from my people that I work with, my team, I've never felt less or different or anything like that. Through the years, I have had, I'll tell you one, I still remember this. I had this man, and he came by a meeting once that I was in. This was years ago. And he said, "Who's presiding at this meeting?" He said, "Who's presiding at this meeting?" Yeah. And he was inferring, because I was in charge and I was a woman, that I couldn't preside. And I turned to him and I said, "I am." And then I just went back to the meeting. And so I still remember that to this day. And then I had one of my predecessors told me, this was before I became the president of the bank. He said, "Our bank will never have a female president." He told me that. And when this all happened, I seriously wanted to go and say, "Remember that you told me that our bank would never have a female president?" And to that, I'd like to say, in a very articulate manner, "Ha, That's my response.
That's it.
That's my response.
And then maybe just gift them one share of Glacier Bank stock.
Here you go.
You know what I mean? And now you can be a stockholder in a company that has a female bank president.
So, because to me, it's always about the best person.
Yeah.
It's the best person. Who cares what color, gender, ethnicity? I don't care. I want the best person with the best ideas.
I wholeheartedly agree with you. And as you well know, in our office, it is for sure the majority here of the people here do retail. I generally think that a female is much more inclined to just be better at the retail business than a male is. It is interesting. It's very difficult, though. It's still difficult. Mm-hmm. I have a very difficult time identifying new candidates that are coming to our office in general. and then those that I feel like might be good and are female. It's been a challenge for us.
There's a quote that I've had for years and years, and I wish I could remember who said it, but it said, before becoming somebody's wife, before becoming somebody's mother, become somebody. And that's always stood with me. Before you get these different labels on you, become somebody. And then everything else will come from that. And that's what I've always tried to do. I've had people tell me before, different meetings and things, you're different. And I say, in a good way?
Yeah, thank you.
In a good way, right? We did these presentations for Glacier back in January, and I had some people come up to me and say, yours was so different from everybody else's. And I just said, I decided from the very beginning that I was going to be myself. And if that wasn't good enough, then that's your issue, because I'm going to be myself and I'm not going to be someone else. And if you don't want it, then that's fine. I'm not your cup of Diet Coke for everyone, but I'm just going to be me. And I think that I want to be genuine, and I want to be, then you don't have to put on airs. You're just yourself. And my passion is our people. It's our employees, really. And then our customers and them as relationships, not as numbers. I had an experience last week. Someone asked me about relating to someone, and they said, what did I do wrong in this conversation? I said, you forgot the person. You had the numbers, you had the data, all that. You forgot the person, and you never forget the person. The person's first, then everything else will come from that. And I think that's how I like to live my life.
I love that. And what a great way to wrap today. For anybody out there that's listening to this podcast and has been enjoying this, if you're in the state of Utah and you're not totally satisfied with your banking relationship, Shelly's not putting the plug in. I'm going to.
Oh.
You need to check out First Community Bank Utah. Her top-down leadership, where she is developing people, is evident at every layer of the company that I've found so far. Tremendous employees, absolutely top-notch team members, people that are they're doers, and they get it done. And back to the customer first. So it's worth checking out the bank.
Oh, thank you, Chris. That was very nice. Thank you.
No problem. We appreciate you coming on the Dirt Dog Pod today. Thank you.
Well, maybe I'll do another one someday.
Yeah, we would look forward to having you back. Let's hit the billion, and then we'll have you back. That should be like next month, the way you're headed.
I'll be back. I'll be back. Thank you so much.
No problem.